Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hopes for School podcast, where we amplify student voice and celebrate and share ideas for educational transformation. My name is Jennifer Casa-Todd. I'm one of your co-hosts. I'm joined today by
My name is Karen, and I'm a co-author of Hopes for School as well as a current college student.
We're so excited to be joined today by Sean Ziebarth, who not only wrote the foreword as well as an idea spotlight, but is Karen's former teacher, and from what I understand, inspired all of this. So welcome, Sean. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I'm an English and a journalism teacher at Fountain Valley High School. It's in Orange County, California. And yeah, Karen was my student for many years as an editor of our newspaper, Bear and Banner, and she was in my AP language class her junior year. And yeah, Karen is an amazing writer. She's always been a great writer. I've always enjoyed her writing. And so it doesn't surprise me that we're here talking about Karen's book at all.
Ah, fantastic. And I guess that leads me into my next wondering, how did this journey even begin? I mean, we heard a little bit about it from Karen's perspective in our first ever episode, but would love to hear it from your perspective as her teacher who began it all.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because it all, I don't want to give away like my teacher spotlight, but all of that really ties in. I mean, I am radically pro student, and one of the reasons why I love teaching is to work with students, to hear what students have to say, to help them shape their thoughts into writing. And so, yeah, this all started with just one project that I have done with my students for a few years. And Karen went at it like 153%. And it starts with having students ask questions and ask a lot of questions. And really, and it has to do with when we're reading books, teachers, and I do this too, and it's not a bad thing, but we know a lot about the books. We've read the books many, many times. And so a lot of times we kind of play the, hey, remember what I think about this book? Remember what I've noticed about this book? And so I always wanted to give the students a chance to bring their own experience and their own interests to books and have their own question that they want to follow.
And that's just so significant because I was a former English teacher as well. And we know, right? Like and I know I did this in my career too. We spend 3 weeks on a book and we're sort of directing them in terms of what themes to explore, what questions to ask, what essays to write about it. So maybe now's a really great time to talk about that, the idea spotlight that you introduced and that Karen really took off with, because I do agree that that's kind of foundational to the story of how this book began.
Yeah, and yeah, let me add, I remember distinctly, I had a student of mine who, she went to college, she went to Chapman University here in Orange County, and she came back after her first semester and she's like, Mr. Ziebarth, I just wrote my first college paper in an English class. And I'm like, oh, what was the prompt? And she's like, there was no prompt. We read about 100 poems and the prompt was write a 20-page paper on poetry. And this was years ago, and it hit me, especially in an AP class. We're always prepping the students to follow the prompt, follow the prompt, follow the prompt. But life doesn't always give you prompts, and they need to be able to explore their own ideas that they've come up with. And so the way that I've done this is there's a book called Make Just One Change. It's by Dan Rothstein and Lou Santana. And it's just all about teaching students how to ask questions, how to have their own questions, and to turn it over to the students and allow them to follow that question kind of however they want to follow it. And that's what the spotlight's about. And I just, I think we ask students a lot of questions in school, but I think we should teach them how to ask more questions. I was just at a competition, a Southern California Journalism Educators Association competition in LA last weekend. And we heard a newspaper publisher, and he told the journalists, he said, if you haven't got kicked out of that room or got kicked out of that interview, you haven't asked enough questions. So I love that. Like, bring on the questions.
Amazing. And we know we're in such an information-rich world that the content doesn't matter, does it? Karen, would love to hear from you. I mean, here's this technique, and what kind of an impact did this have on you, being able to, I think, for the first time in a long time, pursue your own learning and your own questions? There's your teacher. If you had to talk to your teacher about it, what would you say?
Yeah, I think the question exploration at the moment was life-changing in a lot of ways, especially because it led to us having this book, but also because, like you mentioned, for many years in school, I was really used to following the prompt, especially in a lot of my honors and my AP English classes, because the way that we're taught is to be able to answer the prompt in one way to pass the AP exam. And it's always about the AP exam, what College Board wants you to do. And I totally get that that's a goal and makes sense as to why you're taking an AP class. But as someone who really likes to learn, I felt like it was really restrictive to only be taught that kind of writing or that kind of thinking in an English class. So having the question exploration and being encouraged to think of my own prompt and pursue the things that most interested me, it was really important for my own learning and development. And it made me like motivated to start to explore other ways that I could try to be more like student driven and take charge of my learning in school. And I do want to highlight that in college, the kind of question exploration that Mr. Ziebarth has taught me was actually pretty normal. So I thought it was interesting that in high school it's more structured, but in college, especially my English classes, we're really encouraged to write about what interests us, because again, in a lot of my English classes, there is no prompt to, and it's on us to think of a prompt that just relates to the course topic, and then we can run with that.
Yeah, I love that. I'm having a wondering as we're having this conversation, what would teach a primary school teacher or a teacher of an intermediate grade say? Is this just a high school thing, or is there much capability with younger students as well?
I think I should have had this. I should have had this little chart ready, and I think this is in Warren Berger's A More Beautiful Question, and he talks about how as young people get older, they ask less questions. So I think in probably elementary school, those kids ask a lot of questions. I'm sure elementary school teachers are like, wait, my kids are always asking questions. And I think as kids get older, in high school, and especially in maybe those advanced classes, if you ask a question, you look dumb because you might not know the answer. And so I think people just learn to stop asking questions. And I think it's kind of a peer thing, and it's kind of a self-constraint that naturally, young people go through.
That is such a good point. I'm a pre-service teacher right now, and I've been doing observations. And I really and truly believe that you can create that culture in your class where kids feel safe to ask those questions. Because I've been in, 9 classrooms in the past 2 weeks, and you absolutely can tell where that's a priority. So I thank you for that. And I would like to note that both of those titles of the books we'd love to be able to put in the transcript, so that if anyone wanted to pick it up and learn more, they
Oh
could.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and as long as we're speaking of books, all right. Were we going to talk about books later?
I was gonna ask you for your favorite book later. So if there's a book
Okay.
connected to this topic and you want to talk about it now, then you go ahead.
Yeah, kind of. This is like my English teacher ultimate nerd book, and it's at home. I don't have it with me, but I mean, this thing. If you're an English teacher nerd and you love art and art history, it's called English Composition as a Happening by ah I don't want to get his name wrong. So that's what's called English Composition as a Happening. And this guy took a 1967 essay by the same name and blew it up into a full, like 300-page book. And I read that thing every summer. It's like my English teacher Bible. And if you want to, like, it's super nerdy, but that thing is like, that's the holy grail for me.
Okay, well, we'll make note of that as well. I think before we go on, I would love to know, um, for someone who hasn't read the book yet, or it has read the book and is kind of wondering how this technique sort of factors in, could you give us a really quick summary of the process? Like, does this take weeks? Could you do this in a constrained amount of time? Like, in a nutshell, how could a teacher take this and put it into their classroom, regardless of the subject they're teaching?
Yeah, regardless of the subject you're teaching, what you typically you start with a statement, and it helps if it's a little controversial, if it's a little argumentative, and you could use it as in like a one day. You could use it in a unit. You could use it, over a semester. And I like to get the students to where they start developing their own prompts, for like even a chapter of a novel. So it's really flexible in that way, and uh, yeah, it's really flexible. You could do it in one sitting, one class period, one chapter, or whole unit. So it's great. But it starts with you give the students a prompt, and I should have. Oh, I remember the prompt for Karen's her blog post that she wrote. The prompt is "School is the best place to learn." And then you give students time to brainstorm questions about that. I usually have students sit in a group, and one person writes the questions as the other students rotate through and ask the questions. So then they're feeding off of each other. It's very collaborative. One student will ask a question, and that will trigger another question in another student's mind. And they just have this whole list of questions. And then the process, you learn how to like pare it down, talk about the benefits of open-ended questions versus closed-ended questions. And then they just have a question that they want and that they want to explore and respond to and think about over a period of time.
Okay, I have to ask you, Karen. Your prompt is school is the best place to learn, and you're a good student who strives to get really high marks. And yet, like,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that journey.
Mhm. Yeah, and my response to that statement was that I'm a loser because of school, and that's the whole blog post that I wrote as part of my submission for the question exploration. I remember we were reading Catcher in the Rye and talking about Holden's journey learning, and then that also made me think about if school is the best place to learn, then even though I'm getting these high marks, how come I still feel like I'm not being stimulated? I still feel really unfulfilled in school, and that led to me doing a lot of research to answer that question.
Mm. Okay, my teacher heart is breaking a little bit, but now we have hopes for school. So I think that's pretty incredible. Thank you. So thank you, Sean, and thank you, Karen, for taking that prompt and running with it in the way that you did. One of the things that I think we're most proud of in this book is it talks about, how what our hopes for school are, but it also shares different ideas by different people, such as you, in terms of idea spotlights. I think one of the questions we want to ask in this podcast is, what is an example of school done right? in your experience or context. And it can be anything. It doesn't have to be connected to what you did for our book, but it's like you walk in at like, for example, I was in a classroom because I'm in all these classrooms, and I walked in a little bit late. I sat at the back, and one of the things that the teacher was doing, my student teacher was doing, because it was a culture in the class, is he had an attendance question. Instead of asking kids or doing attendance quickly, his question was, every day it changes, and this particular day it was, where have you volunteered, or where would you love to volunteer if you could? And it took about 5 minutes to go through everybody, but I thought by the end of that, how much did we learn about each other in this tiny little thing, right? So to me, that's an example of a tiny tweak that someone could do done right. It's school done right because the teacher's getting to know the kids are getting to know each other, and we know that empathy builds when you know each other. So I just had to share my example, but can you share an example in your context, or that you've seen, or that even you've experienced, of school done right?
Is that question to me? Okay. So I have, besides AP English language, I also teach our newspaper class and our video broadcast class. And those two classes, we have real world deadlines. We have a real audience, someone who experiences student work. And for me, that's like the best, is when students are making something, learning something, sharing something to an audience on a regular basis, and that they're leading it somehow. And so I spend a lot of time trying to make my English classes more like my production classes, like my video class or like my newspaper class. It's difficult because, we have this AP exam. We want them to be ready for it, but I really try to give them as much ownership over their learning and direction, and because I want them to make those choices, and it's especially with a writing class, like students, they really get excited about writing. It's kind of sad at the end of the year when we're working on their college essay, and all of a sudden, students really care about writing at the end of the year because they want to get into that college. And so now they're asking me more questions than they ever have before. And so, how do you catch that all year long?
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Karen, I'm not sure if you wanted to comment, just because one of the chapters is about making school kind of more practical for a real audience. That's obviously something that resonates with you as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I took journalism with Mr. Ziebarth all 4 years of high school. So now I'm reminiscing on that experience of actually producing for a real audience. That reminded me about how during the COVID pandemic, when it was really bad and we were all in isolation, I was entering editor-in-chief that same period. And then there was a lot of pressure on us to be making sure that we were putting out accurate, timely news articles to inform our district about what's going on with the isolation, with returning back to classrooms. And again, there was like these deadlines that we had to meet, but also knowing that we're the only student newspaper in our district, that added that pressure, but it also felt really rewarding. So I think that something that Mr. Ziebarth is suggesting is also something really important to think about, is how we can encourage students to create work that's meaningful to them, but also give them practical skills and practical knowledge that they can take and apply outside of college or outside of the classroom as well.
I love that. And it reminds me, again, I was in another class last week, and the teacher used a program called School Treasures. And after their poetry unit, she binds all of their poems with their artwork, and the students could purchase a copy of this. And it's also held in the school library. So there's that, even for, and this is a grade 6 class, right? For younger kids, the ability to still produce work for an audience, work that they could be proud of. So thank you for sharing that. I love that.
Yeah,
Sean? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh yeah, and I think the process to producing is also something really important to engage in too. And recently, I finished my last research essay of college, like full-blown research essay where we did a lot of research across different disciplines. And the way that that class worked in my capstone class is that you're not really graded during the process of writing because it's really iterative and you're going back and forth with all of these ideas. So instead of that being graded, what's really graded is just the final product. And I think that not having grades during the process, which is something that we also talk about in our book, taking the grades away and just encouraging students to focus on whatever they're producing and learning that process is really important.
Yes, thank you. You're absolutely right. Sean, one of the questions we're going to be asking all of our guests is, what are your own hopes for school?
I just hope, I just hope schools are a place where student voices are heard, are celebrated, are 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 used in some way, are published, are broadcast, are put out in the world. I mean, it's we don't have school here. Maybe in a nutshell, it's this: like school has always seemed to prepare you for the next level, the next level, the next level. I hope that school would respect and honor students' lived life in the present. Like I want them to, because none of us know how much time we have, and the present is very real for everyone. And I think we lose that is in our preparation, and whether it's teaching the kids how to do XYZ because they're going to be in so and so's class next year and they do that next year. So you got to prepare them for that, or you got to prepare them for this test that's coming up. Like let's honor and teach them and help them wonder and be curious about their world and be able to celebrate that world in that present moment more often than we do.
I love that. Thank you. And students, certainly adolescents, are all about the present, aren't they? So I think that would resonate with them as well. Current read or current binge watch?
Or I thought it was and. I thought it was and,
Or
Jen. I thought it was
and.
and.
Okay,
Okay.
and. So
Okay.
both.
Okay. I got some reads here. Okay. So I just discovered, so I love Gwendolyn Brooks, the poet. I got to hear her read her poetry in college. And I didn't even know she had this book out. It's called Maud Martha, and it takes place in Chicago in the 1920s. And it's a lot like Cisneros' House on Mango Street. They're like little kind of vignettes about being Black in the 1920s. And it's so poetic and so beautiful. I love this. And I was really disappointed in myself that I had never even heard about it. So there's this. I'm also reading John Warner, How to Think About Writing in the Age of AI. And I do not back using AI for writing. That's a whole different podcast. But man, the writing is the thinking, it's the being human. And if we're just trying to hit word counts, I don't know. So this is a really good read to help us think through that. What I binge watch, the only time I watch TV is after school, sit down in the living room with my wife. She does her cross stitch. I like to make crosswords, and we watch MASH. And we watch reruns of MASH because we've seen them 100 times and they're just kind of in the background. So I really don't watch a lot of TV or anything because I got stuff to read and crosswords to make and stuff to write,
Clearly. Amazing. Well, I would like to thank you so much for the impact that you've had on Karen and your contribution to the book. And thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'll let Karen thank you in her own way.
Yeah, thank you again, Mr. Ziebarth, for being here and for your support through all of high school. I know that I mentioned earlier that I had Mr. Ziebarth's class for all 4 years of high school, and having Mr. Ziebarth as my teacher has been really transformative on me, and I'm excited to come visit soon.
Yes. No, Karen, I mean, I'm just stoked to be part of this journey with you. It's been super fun. and I'm super proud of you and for the writing that you've done. And yeah, this is awesome. And you just keep writing. Let's do this again with another publisher, and we'll do another podcast. And let's keep going, Karen. Let's keep going.
Beautiful. Well, on that note, thank you again for joining us. And thank you, everyone who's listening. We appreciate it. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks.